we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, so just really quickly, kind of a reminder for the case study that was going on this week. This week it was Stephen who had the star trader or star analyst. Can't remember what they called it. Leave the company that they worked for, and so he needed. He had somebody in place. Sonia, or no, sorry, it was Rena. Was in place to kind of take over, or not take over, but fill in until they got somebody in the position permanently. He worked with a headhunter, basically found 3 people, and then another headhunter contacted him about a 3rd person, each with a little bit of different background, and kind of interviewed, and he had to figure out what he wanted to do, which candidate he wanted to choose to fill that spot. So just kind of quickly, as we went through that, what were some of the pros and the cons that you found for each of the candidates? There were 5, I believe. So there was David, Gerald, Seth, Sonia, and then Rena was the one that was kind of filling in.
So I thought that Rena, I think, I don't know how to say her name.
Yeah.
Rena.
Yeah, I think that she wasn't ready for the position yet. I think that she was learning and she was getting better, but she wasn't ready for that position. I think they were right to go and hire other people. Not just because the one guy was kind of like he was a little bit like he felt like you either had it, you didn't have it, right? That's what he said. And she didn't. He didn't feel like she had it. But I don't agree with him. But she didn't. She definitely wasn't there yet. And so I think he was right to say he would put her in a position with something less prominent as what she was doing. That way she'd still be able to learn and become that. So I thought that was good. I have to open up the thing about the other ones. I have to be open the case study because I can't remember exactly what the case study says about the other ones. What the differences were between them anymore. While I'm doing that, if anybody wants to put their feedback in.
I agree that Rena wasn't ready yet. I think she, at least not for that big of a industry that they were on, the semiconductor industry. That was kind of a huge, prominent industry there. And for her being promoted to that senior position, she needed something a little less prominent, a little less big. So I think she would have done, or she would do well in another industry, another technical industry that wasn't as big, but that one she maybe need a little bit more time, being that, now I can't remember what they called it, but that senior position there. So it was good that maybe they needed to move her around a little bit there. So.
Yeah, and also like my opinion about the other candidates is like this guy Stephen, he wasn't very sure about if they were loyalty to the company because they have been changing like from different companies. And also there is this guy Gerald who in the interview he said he asked about the money or the compensation that they were going to get. And also he asked about some other things that make it, I don't know, it made me feel like he wasn't very interested in the company itself, but he was more interested in the money and what he was going to get.
Yeah.
I wasn't a huge fan of Gerald.
Yeah.
Yeah, in addition to that, the other thing that concerned me about him was he didn't seem to be a very nice guy. I mean, they talk about how he fired one of the junior analysts in the middle of a meeting in front of potential clients, which is damaging permanently to that analyst's career. You know what I mean? Like,
he was a jerk.
Never going to trust that person now.
Yeah, total jerk. That's how I felt.
Yeah, like really not the kind of guy you want in an environment where the culture of what is it, RSH or RHI or whatever it's called?
Yeah, RFH.
RSH. Yeah, Their culture is teamwork. You know, they work really well together as a team, and they want to have people who are going to be there long term, which means you have to be able to work with each other, and you can't work with the other people if you're a jerk to them. So it's like, yeah, no, not interested in Gerald.
Yeah, Gerald, to me, I think the biggest thing, and I mean, this was just, I understand people have their own kind of personalities when they get into a work environment, but he was also 15 minutes late to the interview, and to me, that's huge. It shows me your attitude towards other people. Like, you had no concern or no concern for them, and he gave no reason for being late. You know, I can understand being late and there being a reason for it, but he came in, he was late, and was like, whatever, I'm here. And to me, that's like, no, you need to be respectful of other people's time and their effort that they do. And that was a huge for me, for Jared. It was something small, but still, it was, no.
Yeah.
So
I agree 100%. I thought that Gerald was a jerk, and I mean, he may have been a good analyst. I mean, evidently, obviously, he's a good analyst, right? Just because he rates so high on the, you know, on the, what was it? I can't remember that stats part anymore.
yeah.
But he was obviously a good analyst. He was just a real jerk. I think that the other was David Hughes was another one, right? He showed up on time.
Yeah.
He was he'd been in the industry for a long time. He was a legend in the industry, I guess, right? And I thought he was a decent candidate. They were worried that maybe he was too old for the position, right? Maybe he couldn't keep up with the hours or whatever it may be. But he seemed like a good candidate. I think they worried though because he kind of blown off some of his clients because he was out having a vacation with his grandchildren at one point.
Well, yeah.
And so that was a worry as well as to where his priorities were. Sonia Mitha, she was the mom, right?
Yeah. She was the one from the boutique company.
Yeah, and they're worried about her was that she was the mom, right? Same problem. The travel would have been maybe an issue, and then she was worried. She wanted to be able to work from home a little bit. But she seemed like the discount version. She was surprised what the analyst made. So they probably could have offered her significantly less than the others to get her in the door. And she definitely knew the job. She was good at it. She was obviously very, very talented. And then what was Seth? It was Seth, right?
Yeah, that was the one that the headhunter contacted.
Oh, the self-promoter.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. He rubbed me the wrong way just because of, like, he was a bit of a self-promoter, like in it for himself. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing for this job that he's in, you know? But I think that it might be hard to know whether he would be willing to stick around or not.
Yeah, I think that Seth would give up his job with RSH if a better opportunity came along. Like he was very much in it for how well he could build his own name. Sonia, on the other hand, I felt was interested in the company. She was interested in seeing how far the company could go internationally and all these other things. And Seth was kind of, I feel like he would jump the boat if a bigger boat went by. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it seemed like the two candidates to me that loved the work itself were Sonia and what was his name? David. Mm-hmm. David Hughes and Sonia. They seemed to love the work itself. And both of them had their pros and cons. The other two were more like, the first guy was just a jerk who was good at the work, and he liked the power involved with it. And the last guy was only in it for the notoriety of it. But the other two seemed to really enjoy the work, and so that kind of, for me, that whittled it down to those two.
So that's interesting that you guys picked up on that. Seth was interested in notoriety. I mean, I kind of saw that, but to me, that wasn't a big factor in one of the issues. I mean, it was a drawback, but wasn't a big drawback as some of the other cons from David and from Gerald. To me, Seth seemed like a better option than the other two, or than David and Gerald. I would actually say the person that I would have hired, or I would suggest that they hire, was actually Sonia. For me, she was interested in the company. She came in with her interview, and she had questions that were about how the company worked, what she could do for the company, what she could bring, how would her and the company fit. The others in their interviews, and Seth had a lot of those questions as well, but just not as much as Sonia did. But the others were more of, what can you do for me? Whereas she was, what can we do together? And granted, she was coming from a little boutique store, and there were some issues that she had, being a mom, wanting to work from home, but she seemed to come up with creative ways to solve some of the issues that caused. The traveling and wanting to stay from work at home and not traveling as much. She, in the boutique store, or the boutique place, she created conferences that people could come to, and she can interact with them there, that they really seem to enjoy. So she was coming up with creative ways, alternatives, that she can still get her work done and do the things that she needed to and build those relationships and not have to travel as much. And to me, I was like, oh, well, that's a good point. She's putting effort into it. She's making ways that she can accomplish the things that she needed to do and get the work done. So for me, Sonia was the top pick for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think because she'd already, granted, the boutique was a much smaller company.
Yeah.
But she'd already proven that she was willing that she would find a way to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
And that's admirable to me, because if someone's willing to go out of their way to make something work because it's not compatible to do it the way the company wants it, it means they're willing to put effort into the company and to making sure that it's successful, that they're going to be successful together. And so granted, I'm probably also a little biased because I'm a mom, but at the same time, like, she was killing it, She was already doing really well just from the small business. And I think given the opportunity at a bigger company, she would have just been phenomenal,
I 100% agree with you. She's who I chose too. I thought that one thing that really stuck out to me was that her customers loved her, really loved her. And they felt like, they could rely on her. Even though she had kids and she worked from home sometimes and whatnot, they really did. They felt like they were being taken care of. And that seemed really important to RSH, I guess, company. It seemed really important to their company to have that. And that was the thing. That was the differentiator for me between the two. I thought that David was a good team player, right? He would help other people get better and so forth. I thought he was good candidate. But there was some worry about how he would treat the customer. Like, he kind of blew off the fact that the customer weren't happy with him in his experience, and that kind of made me feel like he didn't quite think about the customer as much as Sonia did. And so that was really the differentiator for me. I think that she was willing to make it work to get more people, more help with the kids and so forth, to make it work. She really wanted the job, and she wanted the environment that came with the job. And so I think she would make it work. So that became less of an issue for me. And then the fact that the other guy was David was kind of blew off the fact that he had offended one of his customers and so forth. it made me feel less inclined with him, especially since one of their deals coming up is with a huge company, and it's one of their big worries. That's why they don't want Rena there anymore, is because there's this huge deal coming in the future, and they want somebody there who can really take care of the customer. So that was my.
Actually, for me, I picked Rena. I was playing white, but the thing is, like, I thought about Sonia, and I also thought about David. Like, they were super good options. But I went for Rena because I don't know, I was just nice and giving her a chance and just training her a little bit more, and also get her to get to that point where she was like a more professional. And I don't know, I just chose her because she was already in the company, and like she was like a person to trust. And with the other guys, they weren't very sure about them, and I don't know. Yeah, I just decided to give her a chance.
No, you bring up a really good point that, you know, Rena is already there in the environment of the company. She knows how it works, and she may not have as much experience, but, you know, Steven has that training program that he's wanting to do to build their capabilities, even though his boss doesn't necessarily like it. He or thinks that you can teach somebody these things, that it just comes natural. Either they have it or they don't, as we said earlier. But yeah, I think Rena might be a good potential there. So one of the things that they want us to share here is that there's a salary information for all of the candidates. So let me see if I can figure out here how to share my screen. Okay, so I can't see the video chat, so just let me know. So just kind of reviewing this and the salary here for each of the people. You know, you've got David and his current salary, and then what the salary would be at RSH, and then the multiplier over what they're currently paying Rena, and how that might affect who they choose, and what they would do. I found it interesting that even though they've promoted Rena to the senior position, even though she's not over, or she's only temporary over this semiconductor industry, that they would still give her a raise, you know, a little bit of what she would have, at least if I'm reading that right, the multiplier over her salary. So, so just kind of looking at this, does this change your opinion of who you think that they should hire? Does salary have an impact in that?
Solidifies mine.
Yeah, same here.
I think that
Same one for me.
I think that Rena, even though it's $0.3 million, $0.3 million is her salary, and it's going to be her salary again. I think that there was mention about bonuses as well in the case. So she would definitely get some increase just from bonuses on top of the salary. But that was based on performance, right? And they said some sectors perform better than others, and so you could expect maybe a better compensation depending on how your industry did. So she might do better than that, but still, Sonia's the cheapest option for sure. And the only other option there that I liked was David, anyways, and he is the most expensive. So for sure, it just solidifies my opinion.
And the thing about David too is that you have no idea how much longer he's going to want to be working. He's, you know, fairly well aged, and the idea is to bring in a superstar who's going to stay with the company long term. And if he's only going to work for another 5 years, and then he's going to want to retire, and he's going to need a retirement package, and there's all these other factors taken into consideration. So even though he would have brought business to the company just based off of his experience and his current client base, because they're going to stay loyal to him, and that would have been huge for the company. But that means that in 5 years or whenever he decides to retire, they're going to have to go through this whole process all over again, and that's not how their company culture works. They want people who are going to be there for 15, 20 plus years, So you'd have to pay David a lot more money, and then he wouldn't be staying for 15 or 20 more years. So.
No. I do wish that they would have included Peter's salary in this, so that we can compare, not necessarily to Rena, who's currently in that temporary position, but to what they were paying the person that was in that position, the person that they're actually trying to replace, and how those salaries compared to that. Because again, if they're at the same level if maybe Peter was at the same level as Gerald, that to me kind of makes a huge difference in your budget. It's saying, okay, well, do we have the budget to pay David his salary, or do we have the budget to can we be saving some from Seth and Sonia and Rena, and what's the comparison there? So I wish they would have included that, so we can kind of have a little bit more comparison there.
Yeah.
But that maybe is me. I don't know if people really think like that. I've never hired somebody in my life, so I wouldn't know. So, all right, let's move on from this point. So I'm going to stop sharing that and come back. One of the other questions that they have is, again, kind of going back to that, the salary there and the position itself. Is one of the questions over here was, should Stephen have let Peter go? Part of the reason why Peter left, I think, was because he wanted more money. And he kind of went back and forth with Stephen on that. And so, if maybe Stephen had offered more money, should he have and kept Peter there? Should he have done all that he could to keep Peter? Or did he make the right decision to let him go?
Keep him, I think. Just offer more money and don't waste time. Don't make problems, I guess. Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that. I think that it would have helped to know what he earned, because it's hard to decide that. Like, if his current salary was $1.5 million a year and he wants more, that's a big difference than if his current salary is $1 million a year and he wants more. Without knowing what he's earning now, it's hard to decide whether he made the right choice. It seemed like was Peter, right? The previous one.
Yeah.
I feel like Peter was looking to leave anyways. I mean, he spent like, he'd heard that he was going to leave for like 3 months, and then he finally gave him his notice. So he was kind of looking to leave, and also when he hired recruiters, right? They'd said that there had been so much movement already between all the star analysts. Like he said, it was hard to find. Excuse me. It was hard to find a good pool because so many people had already made moves that year, and they didn't want to move again. And so it seemed like it seemed like he was going to go maybe anyways. But it's hard to say. If I knew what he earned before, like, maybe offering him more money would have been a good idea.
Yeah, I agree with that. As you mentioned, Peter was already kind of thinking about moving on and making a change, and the case study really talked about the environment that they wanted somebody that was loyal and was going to be there for a while. And I kind of think Peter was almost burned out at that company and was wanting a change. And sometimes no matter how much money you offer, they're not going to stay there long. They might stay there for another couple months, another year or so, but in the long run, for most people, I would hope that money isn't the official the reason why you stay at a place. You stay at a place because you like working there, you like what you're doing, you like the environment. And for some reason, it seems like Peter was just ready to go. And so I don't think a raise would have done much for him in the long run.
I agree, because I don't believe the case study actually said that he had received a higher like pay offer. It just says that he'd received an offer from another company and he was leaving. And if it had been a matter of the money, I feel like if he liked working for the company, he would have talked to his boss and been like, you know, look, I've had an offer for this much and I'd prefer to stay with you guys, but I can't do it for the salary I'm currently getting. And there was never a conversation like this. The only reason why, what's Mr. Connor, whose first name I don't remember. Anyway, the guy who's doing the hiring, the only reason why he even knew or had an inkling was because one of the other analysts mentioned it to him. So it wasn't like he was trying to, for me, it doesn't feel like he was trying to get more money. It just felt like you said, Emily, he wanted to leave. He was ready to go and he had already made up his mind to do that. So at that point, it's like, well, what do? You know?
Yeah. You mentioned the recruiter there, and one of the discussion points that they want us to talk about here is, should Steven have talked to the recruiter about Seth? Seth was the one that came in from not Mr. Connor, but the other recruiter, the woman recruiter. So he was kind of looking around. So do you think Steven should have talked to her about Seth and brought Seth in like he did? Or do you think that was kind of a waste of his time there?
I don't think it was a waste of his time. I mean, it may have been helpful to mention Seth to his recruiter, just to see if he'd heard about him, if he knew anything about him. But at the same time, he did his homework on the guy. You know, I mean, he made phone calls to clients and to the company that he was working for and talked to people and got a lot of information. So it wasn't like he just, you know, let him come in. It wasn't a waste of time. He had a good reason for bringing him in for an interview. And to be honest, Seth wasn't the worst candidate. So it could have worked out pretty well. So I don't know. I don't think it was a waste of time.
Yeah, I just wonder why the other recruiter, the one from the company, why didn't he know about Seth? You know, why he wasn't like informed about Seth? He was looking for a job.
It's because the way recruiters typically work is you, as an analyst, would go to a recruiting office and you would set it up with that specific office. So if Seth was set up with one recruiter, then unless he had applied to several different recruiters, he wouldn't be on the other guy's radar, most likely. At least that's how I understand recruiters going. So the other recruiter probably didn't even know about him.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it was okay to bring him in. He did his research. He brought him in. So I think from a hiring perspective, it was a good idea to bring him in for an interview. I think he got a pretty clear idea from the interview what he was about. But I think that it was a good idea to bring him in. You never know until you get them, you know, until you talk to them and research about them, what you're really getting. And, you know, he's obviously a go-getter. I think from the perspective of the overall company, he doesn't fit as well because he's so he's in it for himself, and it seems like the company is more about like all the analysts kind of share with each other, and he seems to want to come in and take from everybody. So I don't think he fits the company very well, but I don't think it was a bad idea to bring him in. It's like the other study we did, right, about hiring, which was cast as wide a net as you can, right? You kind of want to cast as wide a net as you can and then limit it. And I think that was what he did.
So Seth was one of those ones that did really well at his other firm. Actually, all of them did really well at their other firms. What's what's the guarantee, or is there a guarantee that just because you work well and you're a high performer at one company, does that mean that you're going to be the same level of performance at another company?
I think that's a two-part answer, because the answer is yes, but it's also no. There's a reason why when you apply to a company, you submit your resume and your past job experiences, and they talk to your previous employers. So there is some, I guess you're able to foretell to a certain degree how well someone's going to do in terms of work ethic, or in terms of getting along with other employees, or managing, or whatever they're doing, by what they've done in the past, by how well they've done in the company. But at the same time, you also have to keep in mind that company cultures are all different. So maybe the last company this guy, or the person you're talking about, worked for was very much a hierarchy and not a team player type of company, and they may not do as well. So I think it's kind of a two-edged sword. Like, there's no really positive answer for that.
Yeah, I agree.
Me too. No, she said everything right there. Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of feel like I'm talking a lot today, so I was kind of pausing, hoping other people might jump in. But yeah, I kind of think the same way that, yeah, no matter where you go, your work ethic, you bring your work ethic with you. So, if you work really well at one company, you still can put that same effort into a different company. But you're right, there is a culture. Each company has a different culture, and different people, different attitudes, and those things affect how you work and how you perform. And so, I'm thinking back to kind of the team case study that we had a couple weeks ago, where they were talking about different people, and some people were in the same team, and that didn't necessarily guarantee that the same team, or that would do well in one team like they would in another. And so that, to me, translates into company experience and atmosphere as well. It's the same concept that, it's the norms and the things that you've got at each company that kind of set the standard, and how you interact in that, and how that psychological safety, to me, that plays a part in how you do at a company as well. So all right. One of the last things that they want to talk about here is the human capital and kind of the different traits. It was kind of that big up and down arrow of how portable skills are, and the different kinds. They had the general human capital, strategic human capital, industry human capital, relationship, and company specific. You guys remember those? And how does that skills, those capabilities, transfer as well in this case study? How does that kind of apply?
Well, I think that the people they're talking about in this case are, they have a couple of the key capital items, right? They're general human capital. They manage groups of people. They've had experience with that. They have leadership. They have people who work for them. So that translates pretty well. In fact, they can even bring the people with them often from the other places to over. So I think that translates pretty well. The other ones are strategic. Obviously, they're in a market. They have understanding of the market. They have understanding of the job. That transfers well. And then industry capital. I guess that falls into that. But they work in the same. It's the same job, just a different company, right? They're just getting recruited to do the same thing they're already doing. And so I think those all translate pretty well. The other thing's not so much. I mean, relationship capital, I guess it does, because some people will be able to move with their customers. And then the company-specific human capital, not so much. But they'll fit in more as they come along with that. I think obviously Rena has more of that than the others because she already works with the company.
Any thoughts?
I have to agree. I think that relationship human capital, you may not bring, even if you do bring some of your clients, or even, they talked about being able to bring your junior analyst and your assistant with you from your company, which by the way is wicked cool. They're already trained to work with you, so how awesome is that? But so you're, to a limited degree, you are able to transfer relationship human capital, but company specific human capital is that's not something you can transport at all. You're moving into a completely new environment, a completely new company, and you know how the industry works. But we've already talked. It's like beating a dead horse. We already talked about how every company is super different. So the other stuff is very easily transferable. How well you do with people, how well you do with strategy, that's stuff that, well, and even look at the example of David. David, is someone who knows the industry very well. He's been doing this for years and years. And so his industry human capital is way at the top. And that would come with him when he moved to the new company. But, the last two there, relationship and company specific human capital, are things that he'd have to kind of develop, I think, over time.
Just to add to that, now that you mentioned about David, I remember that there was a point in the case study, when he was in the interview, he said something about the juniors, that he was gonna train the juniors working with him and something, and he was gonna give them knowledge and more experience about the industry. But there is also a concerning for Stephen in that interview, that he was taking the role of the boss in the interview. So he probably has a lot of capital. How is it called? Capital.
The general human capital.
Yeah, human capital. So yeah, he probably has a lot of that he even made Stephen feel like an employee for him or something. And yeah.
Yeah, as kind of I'm reviewing some of this, in the human capital and the general human capital, you gain that from experience. So maybe Rena and even Sonia, being in kind of those boutique settings and kind of that lesser experience in the big company, wouldn't necessarily have as much of that general human capital as some of the other more experienced analysts, senior analysts have. Kind of same thing with the strategic human capital is, just kind of those experiences that I have. I think those are things that you can learn and that you can be taught and would be very beneficial for that training program that Stephen has going. Those are things that they can learn and be taught, but it does come from experience. Those might be things that they would need to work on. But the other ones, it's a company, of course, it's, as we said, it's different for everybody in the industry. They just need to learn about it as much as they can, and they both show that they're willing to learn, grow from that. So from our discussion, and I kind of think we've already talked about this a little bit, but has anyone really kind of changed their mind about who they would hire or the reasons why, or maybe even recognize some of the things that they didn't about some of the other candidates?
I mean, no, not for me. If anything, it confirmed my like already established opinion. I would still hire Sonia. I'll be honest with you, I did consider Rena just because she'd already been with the company for a few years, and decided against her because her experience is very limited and she hasn't had any type of an opportunity to prove herself. And the point of the case study is hiring a superstar, hiring someone who's already proven that they can do the job, you know, regardless of how well known they are. So yeah, no, I would still go with Sonia. I think financially, she's the best option. I also think she's fresh blood. You know, she's bringing a lot of new ideas, a lot of enthusiasm to the company. And even though she doesn't have a ranking in II yet, they've already recognized that she's, you know, she's up and coming. She's going to be there. So what better position to be in than the company that is the one who brings her to that top of that tier, you know?
Yeah. I'm the same with you. I feel like it confirmed more than anything. I considered Rena at first too. Actually, when I was first reading the case, I was kind of rooting for her. But like when I got down to the parts where they're talking about like other people in the company, how they felt about her, like they liked her, but they felt like they were worried about her filling that role at that time. And that kind of changed my mind about her as I was reading the case. The other ones, though, I think were pretty good. I thought that Sonia, more than anybody else, cared what the company atmosphere was like what the company felt like. She that's all she asked about. She didn't ask about how much they earned, really. She just wanted to know like what it was like working with them and how they shared ideas and all that kind of stuff. I think that she fit the company's atmosphere. I don't know, atmosphere is the word I'm looking for, but whatever it's called.
Culture?
Yes, culture. She fit the company culture better than any of the others. And sometimes I think, as long as you've got the skills, here we're looking at people who have very similar skills. So the skills aren't really differentiating them at all. They're all superstars. So then you have to look at other things more. And I felt like she had more of the other qualities that they were looking for in the company culture and that kind of thing. So I think that's kind of how it definitely solidified more than before.
Yeah, just in my opinion, if I had chosen David or Gerald, I would probably have changed my opinion. Yeah, for sure. Because they're asking for a lot of money. But yeah.
You think you'd still go with Rena?
Yeah, I'll still go for Ray. I will still give her a chance.
Root for the underdog?
Yeah. I'm just like kind person, I guess. I don't know.
I kind of agree. I was the same way, Jay. When I first read it, I was rooting for Rena. But yeah, as you read through the case study, for me, Sonia had those questions and she was wanting to know about how she can fit within the company. And I was impressed with her interview and the things that even on that second interview, you know, even before the second interview, she said, well, do we get a chance to work with the people and work with the researchers and work with the different departments so that she can see and experience that where nobody else asked about that. And maybe that was just because some of them already had experience working in a bigger company where she was still at that boutique. But still, I think that showed a desire to work with the company and see how it would fit with her. So I'm sticking with my choice of Sonia first. And I will say that some of your comments, though, have made me waver on my second choice, which was Seth. Maybe not so much anymore. Although I do think that, as Stephen talked to Rena about, was that if he had found somebody to put in Peter's old position, that he would still keep her as a senior analyst, just in a different industry. I think that was the best option. He was giving her a chance to get those experiences, and I think he should still do that and make sure she's got an opportunity to learn and strengthen those skills so that she can build that up. So I know that wasn't part of the case study, but to me that was an important part, that he needed to continue to do that and help build her. He was going to keep her at that position.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
So, yeah. Well, that's kind of seems like it's it. Are there any last thoughts? Any other comments? Nope.
No.
All right. Well, we're ending a little early tonight.
I wish I earned that kind of money.
Too.
That'd be nice.
Well, I would be happy with Rena's salary. So.
Yeah. True.
So I wish, yeah, that's not going to happen where I currently work. So. But I'm okay.
What was it? 0.3 million or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, 0.3 million.
Wow.
But it was penny compared to the other, compared to the other guys.
Yeah.
Drop of water in the bucket.
Yeah. All right. Well, if that's it, thank you all for joining and participating and helping out with the discussion. So I guess we'll see y'all next week.
Yeah.
All right.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
All
you.
right.
See you guys.
See you guys.